What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and here we go. We're going to be reviewing The Matrix Resurrections. Now, my opinion on this, honestly, I feel is pretty different from the majority of the internet. I see a lot of people going on the hating it, that it's one of the worst movies they've ever seen, or easily like the worst of the trilogy, or whatever. I mean, there's just been a lot of negativity. And then on the other side of things, there's been a lot of like, this is really, really good. I really, really love it. I stand directly. I don't know if it's technically directly in the middle, but it kind of is in my mind. I think the movie is the most thing humanly possible. So you can't come at me saying I absolutely hate it, because I don't think it's an awful film, but I also don't think it's a good film. I think more than either of those two things, it's definitely an unnecessary film. Like 100%, it didn't need to happen. It didn't need to kind of come back to life. I would have been totally cool. Not that 2 and 3 are like that, critically or, from even us, right? That well received. Although I actually have a lot of fun. Like 1 is amazing. The first Matrix is an amazing movie. 2 and 3 are fun. I actually really like 2. 3 is okay. I mean, it's all over the place, so it's kind of really hard to judge the film. 4, I feel like, is still probably the weakest. Probably tied with 3. I would say it goes like 1, 2, 3, 4 is tied. But there is good here. There is a lot of good. I feel like, and I'll just kind of go into it. I think the movie takes a really long time to get going. That's the first thing I should say. Really long time. There's also a lot, and people pointed this out on my Twitter too, a lot of dialogue. This movie talks a lot because there's a lot of stuff to catch you up with, catch Neo up with, catch the audience up with what's going on, in the world. There's a lot to say. And, you could always show, but, saying is also something that could extend a movie's length. So I guess you could do that. I guess the point there is, the dialogue's, I think, fine. I think overall it's a pretty well-acted film. I think the leads, the mains, all do, well, not all of them. Most of them do a pretty, like Neo or like Keanu is amazing, right? Trinity, I think, is really good. Trinity is so underused. And I don't know where the idea, now, obviously there was like the woke group, right? And by the way, let me just say this too. Going into this movie, there was a lot of questions of, are they, and by the way, woke, all I mean by that is doing things in the name of politics, right? Having characters do certain things or act a certain way, or having the storyline be a certain thing or whatever, just for kind of political points online. Okay, that's kind of, in my sense, at least for this movie, that's my definition. And that was kind of talked about pretty heavily leading into this movie. I really don't think this movie pushes politics in your face, like lectures you or makes any grand, insane statements on that level. I really don't think it does it any more or any less than any of the other previous Matrix movies. Okay, I think The Matrix, this movie, which maybe is like a breath of fresh air for some people, literally just lives or dies based off the film itself. It does tell a message. I mean, I actually kind of really like, especially towards the end, and I do want to go into some spoilers because I think it's important, so let me go into spoilers. Neil Patrick Harris's character towards the end is talking about that, how people, they like to be sheep, they like to kind of live in this like false reality. And so, like, I actually really like that because I think there's a big sense of that kind of going on in the real world. I really don't look at that too much as like politically, I guess woke, right? I actually think that's a pretty solid message that so now, just because I agree with it doesn't mean it is or isn't woke, right? But just to kind of get that out of the way for any of that, because I think that is a big thing that's gone on. And I would say going into this movie, I was actually very afraid of it. Because I've heard some not great things about it. I had heard that kind of ideology in it. I really don't think that does anything to the movie whatsoever. I really think it just stands or dies, depending on how you look at it, based off the movie itself. Because it is, on the positive side, again, I think some of the main characters, like Trinity, is really good, but she's very much not used, except for, like, the last 30 minutes, okay? But other than that, it's almost like she's not in this movie. Neo, Keanu does a phenomenal job. Morpheus, I can't really get by the recasting. Now, they did try to give a reason why, and I don't love the reason, actually, at all, so I'm not going to really buy it, although he doesn't do bad. Like, it's fine. Agent Smith, I think, is probably the weakest by a mile of that core group. Again, clearly wanting to be the Agent Smith of 1 through 3, but not, and therefore just not being nearly as good. So those kind of things like bugged me throughout the movie, right? And I guess those were generally smaller things. I think the base story in this film is actually pretty solid. The idea of like Trinity and Neo being apart, being somewhat close together, and them kind of reuniting. I like it. I think it's a really solid premise. I think it gets pretty messy. They also lean on the past a lot, but I wouldn't say this is a movie that does nostalgia right. Does that make? And that's just my opinion. Like, is it cool to see scenes from mainly one again? Yes, and granted, in the beginning of this movie, they did do it in a clever way where they're like reliving it, but things have changed because like the story. So I actually kind of, especially after kind of like rethinking about it, I do think it's fine. But I think the idea of like constantly showing flashbacks or glimpses of the past doesn't really, I don't know, like it doesn't help that much this movie. When this movie stands on its own, it's solid at its core, but it's very messy around it, at least in my opinion. And that's okay, that's fine. But like showing all this stuff, and they did rely heavily on the past, I don't really think it helped what this movie was trying to do. Meta-ness was also, maybe cringy at some point. I actually kind of liked it at some point. Like, I don't know, the idea of like making the fourth game, and some of the cheesy dialogue. Like, I kind of liked it. I kind of thought it was stupid. Honestly, that's how I was. People may not agree. Some people, again, I think a lot of people are just going to say, yeah, I really liked it. I respected what it was doing. And some people will say, no, it was god awful. I really think I'm in the middle because the entire movie, I was just sitting there and I was like, I kind of like it, but I also kind of hate it. And it was like that for the entire thing. Even some of the fights. There were, I think, some really cool fight sequences, namely kind of in like the dojo, I think was really, really cool between, Keanu and Morpheus. There was him versus Agent Smith, I thought was a pretty cool fight overall. Besides those two, I think the fighting was very weak overall. I would honestly, argue, even like towards the ending, him just using the Force constantly was a little, I think, overkill. Also, when all of the, people that then turned into like bombers, right? And I think they even referred to them as that. When they were attacking, I just kind of sat there and laughed. A lot of the cuts were, I think, really bad. I don't know. I don't really like the streets, when they're like driving through the streets and people are attacking them. I thought that was kind of horribly. I would say that was probably really badly executed, in my opinion, in terms of like a grand spectacle of what it was supposed to be. I really was not impressed. But again, I think at its core, this movie is solid. I actually liked, now again, like Neil Patrick Harris had some times where it's like that's very cringy and that's very bad. But I also think, and his character is kind of like meta, or he talks a little bit different. He talks kind of like what you would imagine maybe like a game designer or something would talk now. Well, also there is that kind of idea. But he just talks a little bit different. I don't really even know how to explain it. But I've always liked Neil Patrick Harris in general. I think he's an amazing Count Olaf. Okay, let me just throw that out there. I think he actually did he was the main villain, arguably, of this movie. And I think he actually did a really good job overall. So I'm kind of impressed with this movie. I went in thinking, I don't think I'm going to like this. I don't know if I'm going to hate it. And that's probably I'm just going to be honest. Like, I went into it thinking there's probably very small odds I'm going to like this movie or love it. And I may not like it, but I'm going to try to keep my mind, especially like the more negativity stuff that kind of came out. I was like, well, let me just see it. Let's just see how this movie is, right? And I saw it, and it is what it is. I think at times it's very, very boring. I think it's 2 hours and 27 minutes, but that's including credits, so it's probably like 2:20 or 2:15. I don't think it needed to be that long. There's, again, a lot of the dialogue is actually really good. I think the central story is really good. I think Neil Patrick Harris is really good. I think Keanu is good. I think some of the fights were good. Some of the messaging, I think, was actually pretty darn good. Those are probably the goods of this movie. And then the bad of this movie is the bad of the movie. So I can again tell you, I think this movie was very unnecessary. I also don't love the ending if they don't do more. And in fact, they've even talked about how they expect this to be it. Like, they don't have plans to do any more of these, although they're open if she's open to it. I just think like the ending on its own is fine, but if you end it there, it's just kind of it's very weird, especially where you ended 3, and then you bring it back, do all this stuff to get to 4, and if you end it at 4 for good, I think you've like backtracked to the overall storyline or where we are in the film kind of like universe. So I don't feel like you can end it. And if they do end it, I feel like that's going to be a negative. Does that make sense? So, overall, I probably will never watch this movie again. And that's not out of like I absolutely despise it. I don't watch most, like 97% of movies. I don't watch them more than one time. And this movie really, to me, didn't do anything special. It didn't do anything god awful, but it didn't do really anything in like a huge segment that I really, really liked. So it's a movie that I don't really think needed to happen, but it's a movie that I don't think deserves the massive amounts of hate. And by the way, for the love of God, stop comparing it, media, to The Last Jedi. It's not it's The Last Jedi in the sense that it's divisive. That's it. It's The Last Jedi in the sense that some people are going to like it, some people are going to hate it. But when I hear that it's like The Last Jedi, that's not what I think of. I think of ruining a franchise forever. That's what I think of when I think of The Last Jedi. So please stop saying it like that, because that's not really what this movie is. It's again kind of just, for me, just in the middle. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure, as always, you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, so you know when all these videos go up. I do a brand new video every single day. There will be videos on Christmas Eve and Christmas. So if you have some time, take some time to watch the videos. If not, no worries whatsoever. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all there.